Next up, we have Brad Petruska and Eric Zanato. Unfortunately, Russ Long was not able to join us today, but we do have Brad and Eric with us. Brad is currently detailed as a fire management specialist with the Rocky Mountain Research Station's Human Dimensions program. His position seeks to improve strategic risk management on wildfire incidents by blending research with operational knowledge. He's a qualified LTAN, FBAN, and SOPL, as well as a Type 2 operations section chief, But more importantly, he is the husband of a beautiful wife, Molly, and 3 children, 2, 7, and 9. Eric is a fire management officer on the Pike San Isabel National Forest. He's worked 31 years in fire, 15 of which was on interagency hotshot crews and 16 on an incident management team as operations section chief. He was involved in the early development of the strategic operations group and has found a lot of passion in the process. I'm now going to transition that presenter role to Brad. Brad, thank you for joining us, and Eric, welcome as well.
Thanks, everybody. My name is Brad Petruska. Thanks for the intro, Wes. Eric's got issues. He's trying to log on, so webinar host, if you see him hop on to the attendee list, just go ahead and make him a presenter, and I'll start sharing my screen. Make sure you guys are looking at the right one, and I think you are. All right, so I'm going to get going. Again, I'm Brad Petruska, detailed as fire management specialist with the Rocky Mountain Research Station. Right now, Eric Zanato is as well. So we're kind of peers in this endeavor with strategic operations. So on the Fed side, you hear this term floating around for a while. We're just trying to give you an overview of what it is and really what that looks like from an analyst SOPL perspective, looping back into it. You guys are probably really familiar with the whole idea of incident strategies because that's what you're trying to inform the entire time. But really, this is an endeavor that was created from the operations group. So Zanato's the ops chief on the Rocky Mountain Type 1 team. I'm a branch director on that one. But this includes a number of different agencies and partner agencies, including CAL FIRE, that we have representation from on this group. So it's really a cross-section of Type 1 ICs, Type 1 ops chiefs that want to start embracing a lot of these analytics to inform their strategies and then inform their tactics instead of the opposite, what we usually see, tactics driving the bus up to strategies. And then your strategy is just the sum of what it is that you're doing at any given moment in time. So what if we can do better, right? So from the perspective of the operations section chiefs that are on there, they're seeing it. They're seeing that some teams are having more success than others. Despite conditions being hard for all teams, teams have a different fingerprint on fires. You can see that through their retardant use. You can see it through the amount of lime that they're putting in and it's getting burned over, stuff like that. So what are the kind of common principles around teams that are doing this kind of stuff already, and how do we start to socialize that more broadly to really get at all the challenges that are facing us when we're trying to manage incidents? So a lot of this stuff you guys already know the answer to. Can we scientifically inform and validate strategy? Well, yes, we can, right? This is the Fire Environment Subcommittee call, and we're all talking about analytics and stuff like that. So yes, there is data that exists that can help inform this. And it's really trying to get these groups of people, right? The analysts, the SOPLs, and the ops chiefs all working together towards what a strategy is, with operations, leading that charge, not necessarily in the development or whatever, but as far as briefing that to the folks on the ground, that's really what the meat of strategic operations is. Everybody's flying the same plan. Getting away from that hindsight bias, that decision bias that mostly drives fire management is kind of the end goal of all this stuff. So attributes of effective planning for what the group has recognized. They have a process, the INT does, in clear intent to have a strategic plan on every incident. They commit people to do this stuff, to do the strategic planning. A lot of times it's an ops chief. A lot of teams run with a SOPL that's running this kind of stuff, and it's just super integrated with operations. So it's not so much the noun of who's doing it, it's just a verb. It's something that needs to be done in order to hopefully improve outcomes on the back end of everything. There's some stuff in here I know you're familiar with. We've talked on it on these calls a lot, but RMA analytics. So something that's surprising is the disconnect that's out there between, the group of analysts and folks that understand, yes, wildfire analyst is a thing. There's an RMA dashboard that has all this sort of stuff, versus the people that really need it. The folks that are in the field, the ops chiefs, the division supervisors, they really need to be seeing this stuff, right, for it to have any value. So it's trying to remove some of that disconnect between what data we have to who's actually using it. So really a very similar thrust of the presentation as what Joaquin and Jeff just presented. The biggest thing that StratOps is focused on is building this strategic planning map. So that's the language that strategy is spoken to. It's a spatial language. If we're briefing everybody from, in our operational briefings to our cooperator meetings, if they're all being briefed to that, while everybody might not agree with the strategy, they at least understand how it's cohesive, how it links together. So that's kind of the overall goal of what the strategic operations stuff is. Creating the map, using data to inform that, and really starting to balance those risks to firefighters against the risks to the HVRAs that are out there potentially going to get impacted by the fire. So, right, verb, noun, we talked about that. A lot of teams, operations chiefs are doing this. I know a lot of teams have dedicated, well, not necessarily dedicated, but they do identify a strategic operations chief when they go out, and that's their job, is identify this kind of stuff and speak to it. So figuring out what that design looks like in order to address whatever problem or challenge that incident is showing you. And again, it's all about having strategies that inform tactics rather than the tail wagging the dog. So in order to reduce chaos, improve the quality of decisions, and increase the likelihood your objectives are going to be met, that's kind of the effect that they're going for, we're going for out of strategic operations. So I keep saying they and we. I got looped into the group, I think last December or something like that, after seeing a presentation they had put on at S520, which is, that course for folks that are going for Type 1 qualification at anything. And I came at it from an analyst and SOPL perspective of like, well, there's a lot of overlap here, a lot of things you're describing that SOPL should already be doing. And I guess I'm here to spread it to you guys that there's a lot of interest in this right now, and that the stuff you produce day to day, there's a new desire, I think, from ops chiefs to have that stuff and really be involved in that to a greater extent than what, historically they might have been. And I think that's just a testament to the skills that you guys all have, as well as to them wanting to learn and recognizing that their past experience is not going to help them as they enter kind of a new unknown. So here's just the hive mind map, is what I call it, of the operations section chief. There's a lot of stuff going on in that. It's just trying to show, some things that stand out, the alignment of strategies, tactics, and tasks, getting your IC to support that, and how that trickles down to every single thing. So clearly, if you have a strategy in place that's driving all of your tactical decisions, your 204, stuff like that, that'll be more aligned, you'll have more buy-in, folks will have more unity of effort than the other way around. And I think that's really the thrust of it. Not seeing Donato on, I'm gonna look, yeah, it's not on. So it's just me, sorry. Anyway, I'm just going to go in a little bit to what the process actually is. Really, it's all about risk management. Working from home, so say hi to my wife and baby. What this is really focused on is that strategic risk management level. It's been documented, right? We all know that it exists, but there's not a lot of robust processes built around it. Years ago, the GTR 298 came out and it identified a workflow, and then, I printed it out, it sits up in my cubicle at work and collects stuff. So this isn't like a new or reinventing the wheel sort of thing, right? There was RMAT teams, that GTR predated RMAT teams. It's just that we have analytics available right now to really inform that strategic level. So this all kind of stems to what we want to do is improve decision making. We know that we can't just improve outcomes directly. That's not possible. And we also know that even if we have better decisions, you're still going to have bad outcomes sometimes. But what I'm going to do is just go a little bit into that strategic risk management process and elaborate a bit on what it is that strategic So let's talk about what strategy is. We're borrowing a lot of stuff, not really from the military, but more from business and financial literature about risk management. So the basis behind that is that markets are inherently uncertain, and that's what the risks are. They're presented by the uncertainty. So it's really similar to fire management in that way. It's not really militaristic because fire is not sentient. It doesn't choose what to do. It just does things, and it's influenced by a million variables. So leaning into other fields of strategy is probably more appropriate in this. But really, we're talking about a design solution to a problem. Has three parts. Any good strategy does. The diagnosis. So what is the problem? The problem isn't that there's a tree on fire. The problem is that that fire could spread, threaten human communities, poses risk to the people that we're asking to go to it. And that's all what the problem actually is. Then we have our guiding policies that define that approach. So one approach is to not respond, right? You could have, to take it to like a huge level of absurdity, you could have a marshal fire. And in order to mitigate the risks to responders, you could choose to not send them there. That is one thing that is not really acceptable socially or politically, or really in any other sense. So that's a policy that would not fall within guidelines that are established for fire management. But those actions are really how we're going to carry out the policy, the guiding policy. So at the fire level, we're talking about the set of coherent actions taken to address a couple challenges, taking the best balance of risk to lives, communities, and landscapes. That's really at the crux of what all this is. So if we define this up front, we can develop tactics that follow this and hopefully reduce risk, or at least balance that risk as best as we can, to both the firefighters we're asking to go to it, as well as the HVRAs that stand to have some threat from that fire. At the heart of it is this process, which if you're familiar with that GTR 298, this is incredibly similar. This little inner box was lifted straight from it. So it's not a new process by any means. It's a little streamlined is all that it is. So how does this relate to analysts? Well, the first thing we're talking about is defining the incident challenge. So what is the problem? We need to have some confidence in where that fire is going to be. So the first talk really set this up. That's what CAL FIRE is doing when they use wildfire analysts and stuff like that. That's what we do when we use WFDS or whatever models that we want to use to define that. Where is the fire going to be at what time frame? What's out in front of it? What are the HVRAs? And can we prioritize that? So it's great to have a laundry list of stuff. Some of those things are more important than others. Typically in fire management, human habitation is the highest asset at risk. So that's a good starting point. Things to help with that, if you have a QWRA, well, those include prioritized values at risk. You'll see we're using this language kind of interchangeably. When you start bringing up stuff like QWRAs with ICs and ops folk, there's a little bit of shock and surprise in the eyes, and we're trying to speak in languages that, yes, we can understand what a critical value at risk is, and we also understand what an HVRA is, but they're pretty much analogous. So that's step one. The second step in strategic risk management process is developing and evaluating strategies against one another. So if we're looking for that balance, status quo isn't going to tell you what the best balance is. If you're already doing something, well, what different things could you be doing? Do you need to be going direct right there? Is that the best way to protect whatever critical value is out there? Or if you go indirect adjacent to it, is that a better balance of risk? So it's things like that, documenting what that balance might actually look like. And it's using things like pods, PCLs, how many crews are available, what do you need to do it, how long is it going to take to build that line versus when the fire is going to get there, stuff like that. There's another tool I'm not going to go into too much, but the strategic risk assessment that's out there, it can help you evaluate among strategies with kind of a jerry-rigged look at what an ENVC to HVRAs and personnel might be from each strategic alternative. So at the end of this, we want to know what do those different balances look like in these alternate realities that we've crafted here. And if I can go up, go to the next one. So after that, right, it's select, and that's its whole own step because we can't just pick everything in a vacuum like, you know, with fire management. There's not one person typically at a complex incident management level that's making all these decisions. So they're not made in a vacuum. We need to get a ton of folks on board with it, and that starts with the people that are working for us. So the IMT, the boots on the ground, the agency administrator that we're working for, they all need to be bought into that, as well as, you know, our cooperators and stakeholders. They don't necessarily need to agree with everything, but if they understand it, understanding is kind of that first step towards acceptance, right? So if we're framing things in the best balance of risk to our firefighters and our critical resources, it's a pretty, it helps frame that conversation a little easier than, why aren't you going direct right here, right now? The fire is laid down. Well, there's a huge wind event coming tomorrow. We can't get the line in, so we're going to boost this other line that we've got a lot higher probability of success on. So after that, we're on to the implementation stage. So we talked about that common language, which is the strategic planning map. And honestly, it looks really similar to any planning map that you might have seen. There's a lot of flexibility inherent in the format, and I'll show you an example here in a second. But what are those strategic control opportunities, or which PCLs are you picking up on that you're going to use or attempt to use, and what's the order of priority that you're going to try to use those things in? Fire history, MAPs, just trying to integrate all that stuff. If you do have that wind event coming, maybe plop a short term on there so everybody can see that. And then at the same time, as an ops chief, you're going to be briefing to this kind of stuff. So you're briefing the strategy, you're leaving the tactics to the tacticianers while they understand what it is your strategy is. So here's one from the River Complex last year in Northern California. Again, it doesn't look that different from the planning map, right? There's MAPs on it. This little Godfrey Ranch, these are just little subdivision things. In this example, they used PACE. You can use PACE, you can call it what you want to, but really it's just potential control features that you're looking to improve and utilize. And stuff like that. So as you zoom back out, well, there's MAPs up top. Again, like a pretty standard planning map. It's not that different. And I think the whole thrust of this is that really all that we're trying to do is just formalize this in a bunch of different IMTs across the nation and get them to use some strategic planning principles. And there's a huge inclusion of fire analysts and SOPLs into this. So the model we're going to with remote decision support gets challenged a little bit when you have IMTs that want this one-on-one support for their ops chiefs. So, you know, with every new idea, there's new challenges, and that's definitely one that I can see from our community, is kind of that integration between the ops, the analyst, and the SOPL all sitting around the same table, talking all this stuff. In state of this, this map is the language that we're just trying to speak to with all of this data that's gone into it, and then getting that down to the people that are actually doing the work. That's the end goal here. It's not over there, of course, because in fire conditions change, right? Is this effective? You can also use that SRA tool to help evaluate what those different actions are and the different levels of risk within each action. In like each coherent action, what's the level of risk of each one of those, each piece and part of that? It can start to break that stuff down as well. Is it working? Yes, no, is kind of this process. If yes, well, it's a cycle. You can continually evaluate things and update as you need to. If no, it's probably time to start looking at a different strategy. And the whole way this process is built is that it's iterative, it's deliberative, it results in progressive decisions, and it uses best available information at any time to get to that. So really nothing hugely new here, right? Like I don't have to click the WFDS thing. You guys know what WFDS can spit out. I don't have to click on what's on the RMA dashboard because this group knows it. It's taking all of that data and bringing it into decision making to try to improve decisions. This block right here, if we can have a deeper understanding and we're reducing uncertainty around these decisions, in a perfect world, your decisions would be better. But that doesn't lead you down to perfect outcomes, right? We're always dealing with uncertainty. The uncertainty that we put into it gets applied. We choose actions based on that, those imperfect observations, and we don't know what we're going to get out of it. So there's no way to, hijack this process and lead it to no structures lost, no firefighters that have died, any of that kind of stuff. And we all know that, but it's just framing this whole thing. Why is this a thing again? Well, it's because we need to improve decision quality at the strategic level. Again, right? Not necessarily improve, but just start doing the things that we've known about for honestly decades at this point. There's some other little bubbles on here you can read if you want to, but you're still not going to have perfect outcomes, and that's just the uncertainty that's inherent in fire management. All this is trying to do is get you to a better decision, and a better decision, especially during times of scarcity, like we've seen the past 2 fire seasons, like we'll probably see again this year. If every fire in the nation started doing a process similar to this, my guess is you could reduce some of that competition, still have bad outcomes, because those are pretty much inevitable in fire management. But on the whole, maybe you'd start to see some glimmer of hope in the future that your outcomes are getting a little bit better. So again, sorry Eric couldn't come on. He's got a ton of great stuff to talk about from his perspective as a part of a team that actually has used this stuff for a while. But I think that's pretty much where I'm at, Wes. So I know I went a little under. I guess there's some questions, we can take those.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. We got about 5 minutes, and then we'll jump to intermission before I speak. So yeah, let's open it up for the next couple minutes and see if anybody's got questions now.
Brad, there's a question in the chat. Is there any consensus yet on what an SRA template looks like?
All right, you say that again, Ben, because I'm just looking through it and presenting, and the screens are weird.
Is there any consensus yet on what an SRA template looks like?
Yeah, so there is a template. I think I'm sharing. I'll just show you. I'll go into that a little bit. As with all things, it's super subject to change. So I'll go into this and show you it real quick. So at its heart, this is kind of what it looks like. It's got a little line chart. On the center of the page here is kind of like if you're going to look at one strategic action, here's what that might look like. Using the ORM matrix, which again, we all know is flawed and has issues, but at least people have been using that. They're comfortable with it before we try to completely change the world. You just pick that severity and probability, rank it out. You rank it out on the firefighter stuff, and then it just plots it side by side. There's a whole group of folks that are involved in updating this, creating this. Ben's on that group as well, who asked that. It spits it out in a few different ways, and then it gives you some summaries. So if you're looking at strategic actions, well, logically, some of those would present more risk than others. This thing just kind of gives you an estimated balance of what that responder to values might be. If these were alternatives, you might have a choice. And a lot of times, right, you're going to do things that you're going to do. You're going to try to save the town of Greenville. You're going to go direct in certain spots where it's really difficult to do because that's the best choice you have. All this does is display what that risk is to HVRAs or critical values in responders. So you can actually have a discussion about it rather than in very vague terms. Yes, this is really dangerous to ask people to go out and do there, and we know that. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. What is the actual risk assets? Is it actually likely that they're going to be impacted? All this tries to do is just give a ballpark to that figure, make things a little more quantitative, and then use it as a tool with your discussions with cooperators, agency administrators, stuff like that. So this is just kind of what it looks like this year. There's a number of test teams, test IMTs that have signed up to have folks come and coach them through the SRA process. That again is really more about conversation than it is about this tool is going to tell you the exact right thing to be doing, because there's no tool that's going to do that. All this thing does is document a little bit. You can take it or leave it. It's about the conversations that are going on around it, really is what the SRA is more about. So this is out there. There's a number of teams that have signed up, and there'll be some test teams going out there to see if it's a helpful process, see how we can improve that tool, and hopefully just get it more codified as strategic risk management during incident management is the end goal here.